Hello there, my name's Glenn, and this is Geoffrey, my friend. Now, Geoffrey is a dog, and he's just been telling me that he'd like to hear a story about a fellow dog, haven't you, Geoffrey? Oh, hello there. What's that, Dave? You're also a dog, and you'd also like to hear a story about dogs. Well, I suppose that settles it then. Okay then, you settle down. This is a story about Goldtop. Goldtop was a dog, a milkman's dog. Every morning, without fail, he and the milkman would wake before the sun and head to the dairy, where they carefully loaded the milk float for their round. In the still of the morning, just as the birds were stirring and starting to sing, Goldtop and the milkman would hop aboard the float and head for the town, the glass bottles clinking pleasantly behind. The nearer they got to town, the more the world around them seemed to wake up. Joggers would wave pleasantly as they passed on their early morning run, and cyclists would gently ring their bells as they pedalled by on the way to work. All the while, Goldtop sat patiently at the milkman's side. It wasn't long before it was time to make their first deliveries of the day. Goldtop knew the round like the back of his paw. There was Mr. Smith, who would be waiting for a bottle of semi-skimmed for his morning cornflakes. Mrs. Douglas, who would often have a biscuit to share in return for a nice bottle of Silvertop for her tea. And as they got into the market square, Goldtop and the milkman would treat themselves to buttered toast for breakfast as they made their biggest delivery of the day to Mrs. Hawkins' cafe. On the way back to the dairy, Goldtop would love to feel the wind in his fur before retiring to his basket for a mid-morning nap. It was a well-established routine that hadn't changed since Goldtop was a puppy, but that was just the way he liked it. One morning, Goldtop was sitting by the kitchen door, ready for his usual round, when he sensed that something wasn't quite right. The milkman had been coughing a lot that night, but it wasn't until he heard the milkman pick up the phone to the dairy that Goldtop knew that they weren't going to make their usual round. He retired to his favourite spot by the fireside, but no matter how much he tried to relax, Goldtop just couldn't stop thinking about Mr. Smith's dry cornflakes and Mrs. Douglas's steaming hot but milk-free tea. There was nothing for it. Goldtop would have to make the deliveries alone. It must have been quite a sight for the early morning cyclists and joggers to see Goldtop at the wheel of the float, but he'd seen it at his master's side so many times, and he was confident that he knew what should be done. "Thank you," said Mr. Smith, as he poured the milk onto his breakfast. "Thank you," said Mrs. Douglas, as she stirred the creamy milk into her steaming hot tea. "And thank you," said Mrs. Hawkins. "I'd not have been able to open the cafe without you." As Goldtop trundled back towards the dairy, the empty milk bottles rattling together as they rounded the final corner, he started to think about his friend, the milkman, hoping he'd be back at his side the next day. So much so that he barely noticed the welcoming party that awaited him. Balloons had been strung from the dairy walls, and there was much talk of a hero that had somehow saved the day. A hero, thought Goldtop. I should like to meet a hero, as he hopped off the float and unloaded the empty bottles. It was at that moment that the dairy manager appeared and held out his hand. "I'd like to shake the paw of the dog that saved the day. I've just come off the phone to some of your customers, and they say you're a hero." Me, thought Goldtop. I'm the hero. "Without you, the whole town would have gone without milk," said the manager. I'd like to make you our first and only milk dog. And at that point produced a milkman's hat and a milkman's apron, just in Goldtop's size. Much as Goldtop loved his new outfit, all he wanted to do now was head back to his old pal, the milkman, and curl up in his basket. He went to sleep dreaming of the following day, when the milkman would be better and Goldtop would be at his side, wearing his shiny new uniform. You liked that, didn't you, Geoffrey?